All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're jumping into a really powerful idea from Emilie Cady's classic text, Lessons in Truth. And it's all about tackling a very modern and I think very common frustration. You know that feeling of being stuck, right? You've read the books, you've heard the advice, and you totally agree with it on a logical level, but for some reason, your behavior just doesn't follow. That space between what we know in our head and what we actually do in our lives can be so incredibly frustrating. Well, there's actually a name for that experience. It's called the knowing-doing gap. It's that frustrating space between intellectually agreeing with an idea and really truly being able to live it out. And what's wild is that Emilie Cady was writing about this exact problem more than 100 years ago. She offered a framework for bridging this gap, but here's the kicker. It's not about cramming more information into your brain. It's about a different way of knowing altogether. Okay, so Caddy's entire approach really hinges on one key distinction. She suggests there are two fundamentally different ways we can know a truth. And, only one of them actually leads to real, lasting change. So on one side, you have intellectual knowledge. This is the stuff we gather from the outside, from books, podcasts, teachers, and we process it with our reasoning mind. But on the other hand, there's what Cady called spiritual understanding. Now, this isn't learned, it's revealed. It's that aha moment, that inner click where a truth moves from being just a concept in your head to a lived reality in your being. It's the difference between reading a recipe and just knowing in your bones how to cook the dish. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, is this just positive thinking, repeating affirmations? Well, Cady was very clear on this, and her answer was a firm no. She saw a huge limitation in that whole approach. See, back in her day, the popular term for this was mind cure, which was a movement that believed thought alone could change things. It's really the ancestor of what we now call autosuggestion, that act of telling yourself something over and over again, just hoping it'll eventually stick. Cady basically saw this as a surface-level activity. Sure, it might make you feel better for a little while, but it doesn't actually address the root of the issue. It's like you're trying to force a belief from the outside in, which, let's be honest, usually just creates more internal resistance. And this is the crucial point, right? This isn't about willpower or trying harder. Cady's idea of spiritual understanding is about a change that unfolds naturally from the inside out. It's a realization that lands with a feeling of ease and clarity, not force and struggle. I know, this might still sound a bit abstract. Inner revelation? So how does something like that actually change things in your day-to-day life? Well, this is where the whole idea becomes incredibly practical. The transformation happens at the level of your perception. When you have a true insight, you don't even see the problem in the same way anymore. You're not trying to solve the old issue with more effort. You're just operating from a new perspective where that old problem has lost its power over you. It's not about fixing the problem. It's about outgrowing it. Think about it at work. A project that once felt totally overwhelming now just seems manageable because you found this quiet confidence. Or in a difficult relationship, you suddenly stop reacting to all the drama because you're grounded in your own sense of peace. And when it comes to habits, instead of forcing a new behavior, your core identity actually shifts. You no longer have to try to be a healthy person, you just are one, and your actions start to flow naturally from that new sense of self. So, how do we create the conditions for this kind of insight to actually show up? How do we move from just collecting information to gaining that true understanding? For Cady, the key is stillness. This isn't about thinking harder to find the answer. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about quieting that busy, analytical mind just long enough to create space for a deeper awareness to come through. So here's a simple process. First, just acknowledge an area where you're feeling that knowing-doing gap. Second, silently, just in your own mind, ask for insight. Something simple like, show me the truth here. Third, and this is the most important step, let go. Sit in stillness for just a few moments and release the need to figure it all out. Don't go hunting for an answer. And finally, just listen. Pay attention to any subtle shift in how you feel, any new perspective that just quietly emerges. It's about getting quiet enough to hear what you already know on a much deeper level. All right, so let's do a quick recap of the main ideas we've covered in this Explainer XO. We started with that universal feeling of being stuck, the knowing-doing gap. We saw that Cady's solution is a shift from intellectual knowledge to what she calls spiritual understanding, a deep inner revelation. And this is way more effective than forcing change through affirmations because it changes our perception at the core. And finally, the pathway to this understanding is through the simple, intentional practice of stillness. So as we close out, here's a final thought to consider. What is one area in your life, one truth that you know with your mind that you're ready to finally understand with your whole being? Thanks so much for joining us. We'll continue our journey through lessons in truth in the next explainer, and you can find the full series right in our playlist.